Thanks so much for taking time to tune in. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Clark, well, tonight's episode is a bit different from stuff we've done before. We're going to talk about the European Army. So what is it all about? What's going on, brother?
Well, I mean, back, during the Brexit campaign, there was a lot of people on the Leave side that were saying, do you know what? The way that Europe's progressing, they want to, have more centralised power, which will do away with sovereignty, as well as the British pound and things like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kept coming up was this European Defence Force and a European Army. And it kept coming up quite a lot. And the likes of Verhofstadt, or Guy Verhofstadt, and the pro-Europeans,
all undemocratically elected bureaucrats in Brussels. Yeah.
Started telling everyone absolutely not, conspiratorial, all of that kind of bullshit. And I think we're now being proved right that it was always part of the agenda. It was something they were trying to get in through the back door, which we've seen a lot, haven't we? We've covered a lot of these subjects on Land of Saints Sinners. The digital IDs, they bring in legislation, and underneath it and behind it all, there's an ulterior motive to get more power and more control. And this is exactly what a lot of the Leave campaign were worried about. And we've been seen, they've been shown to be right.
Yeah, well, a lot of this goes back to the spawn of Satan, Blair himself, Tony Blair, in it, because let's be honest, that's what he is. He wanted to be the president of the European Union. He wanted to set up a European army, not just close alignment, literally for the whole of the UK, to lose all its sovereignty, all its rights, to undemocratically elected bureaucrats in Brussels, for them to tell us how to live, what light bulbs we can have, what TVs we can have. They're to be stamped by the EU approval stamp, if you like. And so I think that's why there was such an anger in the country when people voted for Brexit, because they're like, well, hang on a minute, we've got our own courts, we've got our own education, and we're having all these laws imposed on us from a foreign government.
And it goes back to that Tony Benn. Who gave you the power? On whose interest do you serve? And how do we get rid of you? And the way it was being proposed and the way it was being looked at, it all came back to, you don't need to worry about that because, you're just some little, we'll look after you. The globalization, you'll be all right because you're part of a bigger group of things. You're better together, stronger in numbers, and all of those things kept coming out. And there was a lot of disbelief, and quite rightly so. The losing of sovereignty, the losing of identity means a lot to a lot of British people. And just the same as it does, you're a proud Welshman. Being Welsh means a lot to
absolutely, of course it does, yeah. I think as well, we've already got NATO. So we've already got an alliance of states, or nation states, that actually are part of an alliance. So if we went to war against a foreign power, I mean, we do have an agreement, don't we? That's already in place. So what's the point in having a European army when we got NATO already?
This is what I don't understand. Now, I think again, it's a bit of a rejection of Trump and America. I think that the Europeans are using this as a bit of a power grab. They're using the Ukraine situation and the way that America has acted with the deals that it's been doing with Ukraine and Zelensky, and the way that Putin has been. I think Europe are taking this as an opportunity to go, do you know what, it's a bit of a power grab. We can ostracize America a little bit more. And again, we can be bigger and have a bigger army.
Yeah. Well, Europe's our first biggest trading partner, second only to the US, are the second, aren't they? I think that the close alignment with Europe, which Keir Starmer seems to be really hooked on. Let's be honest, he was a Remainer.
Yeah.
He didn't want to leave the EU, and there were many Conservatives as well. And I put, Boris Johnson always, get Brexit done. They didn't get Brexit done.
No.
Not completely. We haven't left the ECHR, which we've talked about on this programme many times before. There's loads of other things they could have haven't done without fisheries and stuff like that, of coastal communities. But I think it's a case of, like, as you're saying, Britain, our country seems to be in the middle of this. So you've got the European Union and you've got America. And it seems as if we're stuck right in the middle of this. And it is to do with the trade-off. I've always said this, follow the money. So why have a European army? What's it about? What where's the money coming from? Who's going to gain from this? Because in war, people always profit.
Exactly. And this is what, and again, led by the French, they're saying, if we want to be part of it, we're going to have to contribute £150 million to be able to bid for the defence contracts and the works. Because no, let's make no shakes about it. To build an army, it means a lot of money. So there's going to be a lot of contracts going out left, right, and centre to many companies. So for our companies to benefit, such as Rolls-Royce, British Aerospace, companies that have a great pedigree in terms of defence manufacturing and engineering, in order for them to be able to bid on contracts for this European army and build up this European army, whether it be the army, the navy, or air force, or even the technology that needs to go into it, we need to pay £150 million to be part of that club. Otherwise, we can be part of the army. We can have our troops be part of it.
You say that troops. We aren't going to have to fill Wembley Stadium.
No, I think that's quite frightening.
We aren't going to have soldiers. We aren't going to have troops. I mean, if we went to war now, we'd be screwed.
Does make you wonder whether that was part of the plan anyway, that to reduce our defence capabilities, certainly in terms of manpower, to such an extent where it's like, do you know what? Rather than build them up ourselves, it's easier to do that.
I remember, sorry, Ben Wallace, the defence minister, when he was obviously in the cabinet, and the Conservatives. I mean, he always, said that there's not enough money going into our military. We're not spending enough. He campaigned hard for it. He lost his seat in the last election, obviously, but he was very, very strong and firm. I quite like Ben Wallace, actually. I thought he was a good guy.
I thought he was a good guy.
I would have thought he made a good prime minister. That I said years ago on another podcast I was on at the time, when Boris Johnson, the interim period, when he stood down as prime minister. But what is the purpose, though? What is a European army? It's going to poke the bear. We've got Putin now already, right? NATO have pushed the borders. They've poked the big bear there, and he's invaded Ukraine. Right, and it's been going on for years. Crimea, it's been annexed.
It goes back to 2014, doesn't it? Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot beyond before.
So would this embolden people like Russia and China, North Korea, because they seem to be in a pact of their own, don't they, with the Saudis as well? I mean, if we create a European army, does this send a message to them, do you think?
I think it does to a certain extent, but in reality, what is it that Russia gains from taking over European countries? I saw something the other day where he actually came out and said, why would he want a European country, any of our European countries, with trillions in debt? Our manufacturing is poor. Our schools and our education system and what we're churning out there are now no longer the envy of the world. So why would Russia want to take on those burdens? And you can see a bit of logic in that. I mean, that why would they saddle themselves with getting themselves into debt or building up the military capabilities to take on what would be a massive operation, and then to have to rebuild these countries and put in the infrastructures, whatever that they want. So I think when you look at it historically and you look at what happened and what Putin has done, Putin has basically said that Europe and NATO have gone back on an agreement that was in 2014 that was between Gorbachev and Reagan, that they wouldn't go any further east.
And they did. They went right on the borders and increased their numbers, the tanks, the troops and everything else, didn't they?
And So back in 2014, there was the Gorbachev-Reagan deal. They said that the deal was that NATO wouldn't go any further east, and they did. Recently they did. And so what Putin said is that those Russian-speaking elements of Ukraine, he was going to bring into the Russian borders and Russian control. That's what it comes down to. That's a very simplified, simplified
it is.
version of it.
I would say that some people have said that Keir Starmer is a reincarnation of Tony Blair. I think he's worse than. Well, I say that. Actually, no. I push back on that, because Tony Blair, for me, is the biggest nightmare. I mean, if you were around in the 90s, when he became prime minister, the open borders policy, his big push on Europe. I mean, he literally was the foundations of destroying our country and our culture and everything, in my opinion. But Keir Starmer seems to be, 0.2 on steroids on destroying his own country, and this close alignment with the EU. I mean, they're using words, but we know it's a backdoor deal, don't we? Really, that's what's really going on.
Everything's a backdoor deal, and this is why this meeting in Portugal on, I think it's May the 19th, is very, very concerning, because it's a meeting of European leaders. We're not part of Europe. Why are we there? Why go?
Yeah.
You know, we're part, as we said, we're part of
Well,
NATO.
it's the champagne show. So listen,
Yeah.
if you go private jets, we're net zero, but we'll take a private jet. That's all right.
Yeah.
You know, we'll have armoured cars and all when we get there, and they're all sitting in Davos, wherever it might be, having these meetings.
They'll be flying their own armoured cars in.
Yeah,
and
champagne
else.
way Chandon in the evenings, a bit of, you know, Prosecco for the, you know, the poorer people, you know, and they're sitting there and they're making worldwide decisions on our future, and we're not part of the EU. So what is the point of him cozying up to the European Union? There's no point, is there?
No, I don't see the point. And this is why it's very, very concerning, because not only that if this deal is done and we sign up to a defence agreement with Europe, what it will entail is that we will lose our intelligence gathering system, and our intelligence gathering system is one of the most respected in the world.
We have the Five Eyes.
MI, yeah, Five
the
Eyes,
Five Eyes,
MI5,
MI5.
MI6.
Yeah, all the hives,
and, and GCHQ, Cheltenham, and all that intelligence gathering. That the plan is to have that based in Europe, so we won't have control over that anymore. Europe will have that intelligence gathering.
Which is another pinch of our sovereignty again. Then.
Exactly.
Another one,
yeah. So, and on whose interests are they serving? Will they think, oh yeah, but you're just a small island as an adjunct on the side. We're more worried about what's going on here, and therefore the resources won't be there to protect us and our citizens. The other aspect to it as well is that they could turn around and say, do you know what? Everyone from the age of 16 conscripted. Everyone from the age of 18 conscripted. Got to do national service.
Yeah.
And we got no say. And the bit around this, if Starmer is going off to even consider doing a deal, surely he must bring that back to Parliament. Surely that has to come back and be debated,
at least on and voted for.
And voted for. Be interesting to see what the whip would do, and how many people would break the whip.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the sentiment of people right now, they're angry against Labour anyway, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast. I think it would amplify that even more. I think a lot of people, you know, there were 17.4 million people. Now, some of them might have changed their minds for so many years ago. It's, you know, if it's affected them personally, for businesses, SMEs and things like that. But going back to the European Union, I mean, to me, it's an absolute failed project. You know, the basis of it and what it was there for, it's not achieved. And if you look at the amount of European countries that are actually now turning around and doing the Brexit themselves, really, Farage was the forerunner. You know, now you've got many other countries like Italy, for example, and you can name a few, I'm sure, Clark, that are saying now, you know, do you know what? We're paying all this money into this institution, this European Union. What are we getting back?
What are we getting back out of it? And definitely. I mean, Italy has certainly put a statement out there. Their prime minister is very anti-EU. In Holland as well.
Romania, is it Romania as well?
Romania just had an election. They just had a second election because they didn't like the result of the first one. Sound familiar? You know. So yeah, the Dutch they're beginning to move away. You're seeing it in Germany where there's rising anti-Europe sentiment. You know, and even in places like Spain, which you look at and say should be a beneficiary. Like youth unemployment is absolutely appalling out there in Spain. So there's a lot of young people in Spain going, hang on a minute, we're part of this European project, Youth to European Group. How is it benefiting us? Because they're not getting the jobs. They're still not working. They don't have the security. So I do think that people are waking up and around Europe, say in Italy they have, Holland, all those European countries are. And certainly there's a bit more of a rejection of it here. We are seeing a lot more talk about the ECHR because I think Reform have made it a point that they stand alone almost as a political party to say, we don't want to be part of the ECHR, we'll reject it.
It's not just Reform, was it? Because Robert Jenrick, a Conservative, I think he's in the cabinet as well, isn't he? He's also come out and said, we need to leave the ECHR. Kenny Baynog hasn't. She says we need to relook at it, rethink it, you know. So I think there's a split within the Conservative Party over that issue, isn't it? Over where it should leave completely, because it does give us some safeguards. But we already have a British Bill of Rights. So why are we part of it? What's the point? And as you mentioned earlier, there's a reason for it, isn't there?
Well, we have a Bill of Rights and we have a Supreme Court. And the reason for it is there's a push for more central global control. the internationalist agenda. And people don't like hearing it, but it's absolutely there. It's absolutely true. The way that we're seeing far more influence from the large international organizations over policy. Look, we saw BlackRock turn up at the number 10 Downing Street just after Labour got into power, and it was the only bit of the budget that wasn't leaked was around the farmers' inheritance tax. And all of a sudden, there was a change of tact from Keir Starmer, and now we're seeing that the inheritance tax for farmers was brought in, raising 500 million quid, which is the same amount of money that they're sending abroad to farmers abroad. It doesn't make sense.
Subsidies are getting it's disproportionate, really.
But what it does do, it means that there's going to be an awful lot of farmland coming onto the market, and who's in the market for buying farmland? BlackRock,
of course.
And you look at the corporations that are involved, the global corporations that are pushing and influencing not just our governments, but governments across Europe, and your Unilevers, your Nestle's, Coca-Cola Company, Google, Meta, all of those platforms, all of those companies and corporations are stakeholders in the WEF, which is a think tank, and they are creating policies which are being implemented by WEF aligned leaders of nations. And I think this rising anti-Europe sentiment, the people not just in Britain are worried about the amount of migrants that we're seeing coming into the country and what they have access to in terms of work, rights, benefits, health services and things like that. We're seeing that across Europe as well. We're hearing it in Sweden, Germany, Holland, France. I mean, look.
Well, I'm not happy because I can't get a tooth. I can't get a dentist. And I'm a tooth knocked out in a boxing match, and I can't get a dentist. I mean, it's dreadful. You know what I mean? But but if you
end up in that hotel in Runcorn,
that's what I'm saying. What I'll do is I'll go to France, right? I'll fly there, and I'll come over on a dinghy. I'll throw my passport over the side, right? I'll paint my face so I'm a bit brown now. I'll get a tan or whatever, and I'll come over. I'll claim asylum, and maybe I can get to the dentist.
Well,
then I'll go and find my passport in the Channel.
If you get into one of those hotels, where you've got a dentist, you've got a doctor. This is what we're hearing, and in these very, very plush hotels, some of them with leisure facilities and all the rest of it. I mean, I can't afford a gym.
So here's the thing, folks. What you want to do is you want to get yourself to France, right? Find yourself a dinghy. I don't want to smugglers. In fact, why don't we all set up a business selling dinghies in Calais? We'd make a killing. Literally, we really, really would. But anyway, we're going to round this off now because time's almost up again, Clark. But it's been great to discuss this, and I don't know what our viewers think about the realignment with Europe and the European army that they're pushing for, and that has been since Tony Blair, the spawn of Satan, the Antichrist himself. What's your final thoughts on it, Clark? What would you like to say to our audience tonight?
I'd like to see what they think, because it concerns me. The loss of sovereignty does concern me, and I just think that everything that we're seeing and hearing right now coming from this Labour government, there's always something in the back door coming to. There's always a hidden agenda. Do you think we're being conspiracy theorists, or do you, or are you in line with what we're thinking? I'd like to know.
Let's get Keir Starmer out. Let's make Britain great again, and 2 fingers to the European Union. Bye.